The Numancia is a premium Tier VII Spanish cruiser, and before we talk about how to obtain it or the specs on the ship, I will show you my build. We've got Aiming Systems Mod 1, Propulsion Mod, Concealment, Main Battery Reload, and then the commander at the helm is Pascual Cervera y Topete, with Mikawa and Mimbelli as his two inspirations. Pascual was a reward commander for a calendar event back when the Spanish cruiser line was released, but he's available in the store now for 900,000 Commander XP, and I assume he's in the crate, so you can obtain him for free. But the Numancia, well, you're not going to really be obtaining that for free. The other ship in the new bundle that appeared in the store on Monday is the Vrijheid. So you can get either the Vrijheid or the Numancia from the Spirit of Discovery random bundle. That's right on the featured page of the store. There are 100 sets in this random bundle, and each one costs 750 doubloons. So there might be some people out there who get lucky, and they find either the Numancia or the Vrijheid in the first couple sets of that bundle. If that's the case for you, I mean, either ship would be worth paying a couple thousand doubloons for. But there's a very good chance that both the Numancia and the Vrijheid won't be until very late in the bundle for you. So if you wanted to guarantee that you got both ships, you would of course have to buy all 100 sets of the random bundle for a total of 75,000 doubloons, which is somewhere around 250 US dollars. I don't think there's any ship in the game worth that much money. And of the two ships, the Vrijheid, in my opinion, is going to be the more desirable one. The Numancia is not quite on that same level. I think the Vrijheid is kind of cracked. It's verging into OP territory. The Numancia, I would say, not so much. Not that it's a bad ship, it's certainly okay. Some people might even think it's fairly good. But for the method of obtaining it, I don't think it's worth it in any way unless you happen to get lucky and get it really early in the bundle chain so that you don't end up spending too many doubloons. But that's not something I would necessarily advise you try to pursue. It's your money, though. Spend it how you want to. I'll give you another idea, though. If you go to the store and navigate to the pirate section, you can get something pretty comparable to the Numancia for probably less money. That would be La Perla Azul. It's a pan-European copy of the Numancia, even though it might be more accurate to say the Numancia is a Spanish copy of it, because I think La Perla Azul was put into this game well before the Numancia. I believe it was in the first wave of pirate content some time ago. Now, there are some differences between the Numancia and La Perla Azul. Namely, La Perla Azul has much longer torpedo range, and also it's pan-European, so it doesn't get the unique Spanish gimmick of the ready rack for the main battery guns. But if you want, a similar feel for potentially less money, maybe that would be the way to go. You'll just be missing out on the ready rack, but in return, you'll have much better torpedo power than the Numancia has. Now, I suppose we can start running down the specs. Keep in mind they're influenced by the mod selection and the commander build. And we'll begin by actually talking about the consumables before we get into the specs, because both Numancia and La Perla Azul have exactly the same consumables. Each one of them comes with a repair party with a duration of 28 seconds that restores 172 HP per second. They have sonar, which has a ship acquisition range of 4.4, torpedo acquisition range of 3.1, lasts for 96 seconds, and then smoke screens, which last for 104 seconds and reload in 152. Of course, the ready rack reload gimmick here on the Spanish cruisers is nice. I suppose we'll start out with that as we send citadels into the Cataluña's broadside for a total of, I think, 7 citadels before he turns out of the way and avoids the damage from the final salvo. Unlike the tech tree Spanish cruisers, the Numancia gets 3 salvos base in the ready rack. I think all the Spanish cruisers get 2. And then Pasquale has a unique skill that I'm not using in the legendary row that will give you an extra salvo in the ready rack. If you took that on Numancia, you would have 4, but I don't really think it's necessary. 3 is pretty good. As you can see here, we're able to take out the Catalunya. And once you've sent all 3 salvos out, the ready rack fully reloads in 16.1 seconds, which I think is fairly quick by Spanish cruiser standards. There are some cruisers in this game, like the Atago. I think it got buffed a while ago, so it might not have quite as long of a reload, but I want to say it's somewhere around 15 or 16 seconds. And of course, the Atago only shoots 1 salvo per reload, whereas this thing shoots 3. So you've got that going for you. I should mention also, though, that with this smoke screen, the detectability after firing the main battery guns inside of the smoke is quite high. It's 6.8, which is why we were still spotted by the Harlem for so much time there. If you do happen to obtain the ship, be careful. You don't want to be super close to enemy ships while you're inside of the smoke screen, lest they spot you. And you only have 34,500 HP to work with. On top of that, the armor has a big 25mm plate on the bow and the stern, no icebreaker of any kind. Obviously, 25 is overmatchable by pretty much every battleship you're going to see at Tier 7 and certainly Tier 8. And then you do have 27mm belt armor, which can bounce some battleship salvos. There's also some thicker armor on the deck, but the deck is mostly covered in superstructure, so I don't think any shells that reach the deck are going to be hitting the 38mm deck armor. They're probably going to hit the 19mm superstructure and pen that. But technically, that 38mm will be able to bounce any battleship salvo that comes in at plunging fire at certain ranges, so I suppose you've got that going for you. But I wouldn't say this is an especially survivable ship. The Citadel does sit in the center of it, above the water line, and it should be pretty easy to hit by most things out there. Smokescreen helps, of course, increase the survivability because you can hide. As for the damage that these main battery guns do, the HE does a maximum of 2,850. It's got a 17% fire chance, which is pretty good. And then the AP does a maximum of 4,500. No improved pen angles or anything like that, but the fact that you can send 3 salvos in quick succession with the AP, well, you saw what that can do against cruisers. And then against destroyers with the HE, well, as you can see here against the Minigiumo, the dispersion on these guns I don't think is especially accurate. And if you're in a position like this, where you're facing away from the threat, well, you've only got the 2 rear turrets to use, and that's a total of 4 guns. Not exactly a lot of firepower being slung downfield, and a lot of those shells did miss the Minigiumo. But the fact that we can fire 3 of them in quick succession, that probably makes up for the relative lack of accuracy. And for the relative lack of guns, there aren't too many cruisers at Tier 7 with 203mm guns that only have 7 of them. I think all of them at this tier that have the same size guns probably have about 8. This is a little bit unusual for there to only be 7, but of course, the ready rack does help make up for that to a large degree. We should also mention the torpedoes. The difference between this thing and the Numancia, or this thing and La Perla Azul, of course, is the ready rack in terms of the main battery. But in terms of the torpedoes, I almost think these Numancia torpedoes are pan-European torps. They've got a speed of 86 knots, which is typical pan-European numbers, and they only hit for a maximum of 9,822, so they're relatively anemic. But the downside is they've got only a range of 7.5 kilometers, whereas La Perla Azul, I think, has a range of something like 12. And speaking of 12, there are 12 torpedoes in total. There are 6 in either side of the ship from 2 triple launchers. But with that 7.5 kilometer range on the Numancia, you really kind of have to have something pushing into you, like the Scharnhorst is here. And even when he is, we do miss him with that first set of torpedoes. But we are starting to light fires, and this thing will do a lot of that. But again, even when these torpedoes hit, the damage is not going to be that impressive. I think you probably want to launch them in hopes of getting a flood, but you want to be safe in doing it. You do have to be very close to the enemy to get them to land. As for the maneuverability, nothing special here. We've got a top speed of 33.5 knots, 710 meter turning circle, and a 7.7 second rudder shift. As for the concealment, it's 9.8 kilometers with the concealment mod and with Mikawa as one of the inspirations. Not the best concealment in the world, and I think I mentioned already that the firing penalty inside of smoke is 6.8, so you are rather conspicuous. But it's a decent ship. It's good at farming damage, good at dealing broadside damage to cruisers. The ready rack is nice too, especially if you have some trigger discipline. You could light a fire, and if your opponent wants to DCP that fire immediately, and you've still got 1 or 2 salvos left to go, well, there's that. And then you don't have to wait awfully long for the salvos to reload. And the armor scheme will hold up very well against something like a Scharnhorst or other heavy cruisers. As you can see, this battle is pretty much drawing to a close. This is one of the better results I think I've gotten in Numancia. I don't think I've quite reached the heights that I've reached in the Vrijheid, which is a very potent damage dealer. This thing is, I suppose, potent enough. You might not be too impressed with the fires, for example. I think we've shot 120 shells. We've got 6 fires, 7 citadels. I think that's the more attractive part of this ship, the ability to just decimate cruiser broadsides with the ready rack. And the damage from the AP is pretty good. I think we are going to end up hitting one of these torpedoes here too on Scharnhorst 43 as he pushes into us. That way you'll be able to get an idea of just how anemic these torpedoes feel when they do make contact. It should be good enough to take this guy down to not a lot of HP, but I think that was only 7,000 damage from the torps. So I wouldn't recommend, going up and approaching larger enemy ships to try to torpedo them with the 6 torpedoes you've got on either side of the ship. I don't think you've got enough power to really YOLO anything. I think they're best used in situations like this where you're kiting, and the main battery guns are going to be the main source of damage from this particular cruiser. But in any case, while the thing is fine, you can get something equivalent, like a Perla Azul, which you might think is perhaps better than this ship because of the better torpedo power, for the conventional Tier 7 premium price in the store. Again, to guarantee that you get either this thing or the Vrijheid together, you'd have to spend 75,000 doubloons. And there's no universe in which that is worth it. I would not recommend this ship at all for that reason, nor would I recommend the Vrijheid, unless you're one of the lucky few that is going to find one of those 2 ships in the first couple bundles, and you only pay 750 doubloons a couple of times. Then maybe, but buying out the whole bundle chain, I wouldn't do it. As for this battle, we win. 3,000 XP, 128,000 damage done. Not a bad result, not a fantastic result that's blowing anybody out of the water, but a decent demonstration that the ship itself is at the very least okay, but not worth the price tag. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.